Hey everyone, I see people starting to trickle in for today's webinar, Asked and Answered, using Quora to empower your marketing strategy. We're going to start in a couple minutes just to give people some time to come into the room, and we're really looking forward to kicking things off. All right, so it is a couple minutes after 1 o'clock. So I think, excuse me, got a little tickle in my throat. I think it's safe to say we can kick things off. 1 second. Great timing. Okay. So you are here today with Talkwalker and Quora. My name is Sam McFadden. I head up the marketing for the US West region here in New York, and I am speaking today with Quora's head of East Coast partnerships, Chris Marpo. How are you doing, Chris?
I am phenomenal. Fantastic. How are you, Sam?
Hopefully we'll be able to talk through this. We'll see. I'll chug some water real quick.
It's all that conversation we were having before we hopped on.
Exactly. So Chris and I are really excited to talk to you all today about how to use Quora to empower your marketing strategy. And before we get into things, I want to briefly introduce a potential guest speaker. My dog Walter is with me in the room today. As we know from a lot of our work from home experiences where our office and home lives collide, sometimes my dog likes to pipe up during these webinar sessions. So if you hear some barking in the background, it's just him getting really excited about all the excellent marketing insights that we have for you all today.
He's also very well read.
Yes. Tasks for the day. So before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about who Talkwalker is. We are the leading social listening platform who help brands protect, measure, and promote their products and services across pretty much all communication channels that you can think of online. We have 6 offices worldwide with headquarters in Luxembourg. In the US, we have an office in New York where I'm based, as well as San Francisco, but we're also in Frankfurt, Paris, and Singapore. As you can see, we work with a lot of the world's leading brands, and we're recognized by organizations like Forrester and Gartner for the excellence of our product. And a lot of that is driven by the fact that we have at least 1/3 of our team that is a data scientist or an engineer who is constantly working to tweak the product to make sure that we continue to bring the most powerful AI platform on the market to our clients.
Wonderful. I will take it from here, Sam. Thanks for the great intro. And I think by way of introduction, my name's Chris Marpo. I head up our East Coast partnerships here at Quora. I've been with the team for a whopping 2 years. But before this, I've been kind of growing up in digital advertising. So I spent the past 10 years at an early stage ad tech company, went to LinkedIn for quite some time, as well as Pinterest. So I've kind of seen the evolution of the space for the past 10 years. And one of the key reasons why we're excited about this discussion is when I was reflecting on this webinar, is the reason I've chosen to go to the companies that I've been at has heavily indexed on the data. And so I think, with this discussion, you'll get a better glimpse, hopefully, for one, like why Quora exists, the unique kind of data set that we sit on, and how Talkwalker is going to empower, brands, agencies, all clients alike, everyone on this webinar, to hopefully inform their media strategies, as well as just their brand health research as well. So yeah, I'm going to talk through at a high level, like what the hell is Quora? You may have been to Quora, through maybe a Google search, or passively maybe seen some of our emails. So we'll walk through just 101. What are we? What problem do we solve for? And then how are brands kind of tapping into the ads platform that we've built over the past few years? And then from there, Sam will take over just how we're working closely together with Talkwalker. Cool. So Quora. I think starting with the problem that we solve for is most important. And so we fundamentally believe as a company that the vast majority of human knowledge has yet to get onto the internet. And so the knowledge that is available today, we think it's highly fragmented and varying in quality. So knowledge available on verticalized publishers, social media platforms, blogs and newsletters. Quora aims to kind of aggregate human knowledge on the internet. When we think about where we fit in the overarching ecosystem, I would say our biggest comp is actually Wikipedia, where they're owning kind of objective knowledge online. We're trying to bring human experience and subjective knowledge onto the internet. The way we do that is through Q&A. So we've focused on using very simple question and answer format to make knowledge accessible across a wide variety of topics and categories. Our earliest adopters, unlike my former employer, was not moms in the Midwest. It was tech leaders, founders, enthusiasts, or entrepreneurs out in Silicon Valley. Over the past 11 years, we've seen a great expansion in the topics and conversations that are happening across categories like personal finance, travel, health, and things of that nature. What I think is helpful for those that may not have been on Quora recently or have not experienced our question and answer platform is just kind of get into the guts of how we organize all of the knowledge on Quora today. So this is an example of a question page. So the question here is, what is the best advice that entrepreneurs never hear? The way that we organize all of the questions is through the form of what we call topics. So every question that's posed on Quora, the person who asks the questions gets to self-select the topics that the question is relevant to. We also use machine learning to further inform what topics that might be applicable to as well, based off of the nature of the question, but also the answers themselves. The key differentiator for Quora with, I would say, other Q&A platforms is we really focused from the very onset about the quality of the answers themselves. So you'll see down here, this is an answer from former CEO and entrepreneur himself. We use what we call credentials to help validate the utility of the person that's, or the credibility of the answer that's being provided. We also use social cues and social engagements, things like upvotes, shares, and comments. And where this gets really interesting is for this conversation is we're now finally making this available to marketers and brands alike to actually better understand the conversations, the sentiment, and just the dialogue that's occurring on online communities and forums like Quora. But at the core of Quora is that we're trying to connect users to trusted experts. And so the typical use case is we have people that are coming with a question that they want an answer to. Sometimes it's actually researching specific products and services. And the magic of Quora, where we've differentiated, is actually how we route those questions to people that we deem as experts. So when you sign up for an account on Quora, you tell us where you live, where you work, where you went to school, and what topics you might have specific domain level expertise in. That ends up it ends up driving a lot of value with the answers that are actually delivered. Because you can imagine if you're pushing the right questions to people based off of their expertise, the quality of those answers are going to be significantly higher than maybe other Q&A based forums that you've experienced in your past. Another element of that is we have a large community. So we get to take some of these social engagements in the form of things like upvotes to help further validate the utility of those answers that are provided. And that high quality content ends up fueling the rapid growth that we've seen over the past 11 years, primarily over the last 4 or 5. So where this gets interesting is how can brands actually leverage the conversations that are happening on Quora to inform their media strategies with Quora, but also outside of Quora, and really kind of tap into a unique untapped audience today. So I think what we've heard from partners that we work with is they're surprised by this number. We're actually much larger than a lot of people may assume with Quora. So we reach over 300 million monthly uniques. The United States makes up about 40 to 45% of that overall traffic. And so very much kind of on par with other digital channels that you might be investing with today. Another thing that we hear oftentimes from our partners and marketers alike is they're looking for ways to diversify their risk, similar to our own personal, finance portfolios. They're looking to maybe get out of just the Google and Facebook duopoly and find new untapped scaled audiences that they can drive impact with. So this is just a quick overview of the makeup of people who use Quora today, the top line metrics, nearly a 50-50 split gender-wise. Our age demographics here, this graph's slightly misleading. It's actually mirroring more of the average internet population. So we don't over-index on reaching like a younger audience, like maybe the Snaps or TikToks of the world. And we also have a lot of valuable desktop inventory. And I think the reason for that is people don't just use it when they're researching answers to questions from a consumer lens, but they're also using Quora in a professional context as well. And oftentimes those things are happening on a desktop or on their laptop. What really differentiates Quora is actually just the makeup of that audience. So outside of just age, gender, and device, like what is the makeup of those users? In the US, as you can imagine, being a knowledge sharing service, they tend to be highly educated. That higher education tends to translate to higher household income, more disposable income, as well as their success in the workplace, more likely to be a manager than the average internet user. On the right-hand side, you'll see here just our reach unduplicated versus maybe some of our peers. And the way to read this is that on LinkedIn specifically, 49% of LinkedIn users actually don't come to Quora every month. So it presents an opportunity to reach like a net new incremental audience, which we hear from a lot of partners are trying to accomplish. Another thing that I think is really important is just this mindset of users. And it's one of the key reasons why I came to Quora is people are leaned in, they're reading long form content in this day and age, and they're actively trying to learn something new versus passively scrolling through their feeds and accomplish something different. I'm in the camp of like advertising on Quora can actually be additive to the user experience when done correctly. So in this instance, you can see someone's posing the question around how does digital transformation work? And Dell can insert their brand and add value to that customer journey, and ideally helping them get to a point of becoming a better professional potentially in this case. So why are brands investing in Quora today, outside of some of the unique data that we have, which we'll talk in more depth with Sam about? It's just this idea you can reach a new audience that's actually showing intent, which very hard to come by in today's day and age. There's actually this resurgence of contextual targeting, contextual advertising that's happening as we see some of the industry trends towards cookies going by the wayside and contextual targeting actually being valuable in a marketer's toolkit. And then this idea too that you can unlock incremental or net new demand. We hear a lot of times from our partners that they're investing more and more in certain channels, but their businesses aren't growing, and it's because they're capturing demand that already exists. I think Quora plays a unique role where we can actually identify or help our partners identify pockets where you can influence potential future buying decisions. I think the last segue and things that I'll call out is we've built an ads platform to help marketers tap into this. So we have a self-serve ads manager akin to how you might buy on the Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest of the world. We have a lot of the same functionality, inventory, as well as performance-based pricing. So for those, especially those that might be more risk adverse, the idea that you can buy for traffic that actually gets to your website, I think is definitely something that excites a lot of partners and takes a bit of the risk out of it. We also are working with thousands of different brands. I would say portfolio-wise, we index heavily with B2B marketers. As you can imagine, people using it in a professional context, this can be super valuable for them. But we see a lot of success with consumer-facing companies in personal finance, education, professional services. And so really excited to dig in a bit more into like the data that Talkwalker is going to unlock for us and for brands to just better understand the conversations happening on Quora today. So with that, Sam, I'm gonna pass it over to you. I think even stop sharing and you can share.
Yes, thank you very much. That was great. All right, so can everyone see that? Chris, I'm gonna trust you to answer for everybody else on mute. Thank you. All right, so as Chris mentioned, we now have a partnership with Quora at Talkwalker, which is really, really exciting because we are currently the only social listening platform that's able to monitor and analyze the wealth of data that Quora has in its community. So it really helps us to surface consumer and industry insights through our AI-powered analytics based off of what the Quora community is talking about online. There's a ton of different use cases that we could get into for this, but we selected a couple today because we think that these are really some of the key areas that if you're just starting to advertise with Quora and you want to see what social listening can do for you, you can really get into these strategies as you're working with our tool, as well as looking at the data from Quora. So obviously consumer research, as Chris mentioned in his spiel, it's a really big place that you could start in looking at Quora to find out more about your prospects and potential customers, but there's also lots of opportunities for user-generated content, for your own marketing content ideation. Competitive analysis is a huge area that you could explore with Quora and Talkwalker, and industry trends and insights that you can monitor throughout the year or in real time, depending on what you need it for. So we'll start with consumer insights. As marketers, I'm sure many of you dive into the demographics of your audience and potential customers every day, and Quora is a great place to gather a lot of that information from. As Chris mentioned, it's a very active audience, so a lot of the questions that people are asking on Quora will tell you about who they are, where they're from, what their interests are. Some of the data you can get from Quora just from filtering based only pulling data from that website will really tell you about what your broader audience is speaking about too, in a much different way than you'd be able to get from, Twitter or Facebook or some of the other social platforms that we work with. So since finance is a topic that is heavily discussed on Quora, let's all pretend that I'm a marketer from Robinhood and I really want to dig into the details about what my core demographic is like online, but also what kind of questions they're asking about my product and about finance in general. So looking here, you can see that when you're filtering for the domain URL of Quora within Talkwalker, you can look at the top demographic info for anyone who's talking about Robinhood within the community. So something that I found really interesting in looking at this is that, even though this is a finance specific topic, a lot of the top occupations for people who are speaking about Robinhood in Quora are not necessarily finance related. We obviously have entrepreneurs and investors, but there are also authors and writers who are in there. There are IT professionals. So it really shows that there's a lot of different ways that you could connect with these people online through Quora by looking at what the community is discussing currently. We also see that the gender skews heavily male. Something else that I thought was really cool when you look at the top interests is, although Robinhood is a financial planning and investment app, the top interests of a lot of people speaking about Robinhood in Quora are around literature and family planning. So that tells me that people who are using the app are forward thinking. They're, trying to see what kind of questions can be answered about how they can invest in their future, maybe for their family. And that's something that you can use when you're planning and strategizing for your marketing around those questions. So I pulled one example here from one of the top mentions that we saw back in March around Robinhood on Quora. At what point, dollar amount, did you stop using the Robinhood app for investment in favor of something else? If I were a marketer at Robinhood, that would tell me a really big amount of information about my consumer life cycle, just looking through the different answers that people have there to really understand what's making people tick on the app and what kind of things might be lacking that can keep them on if they are deciding to not use this anymore. So while this is a Robinhood specific use case, you can definitely use it for any other industry that you might be working within. And pedaling off of that a bit, you can also start to dive deep into the Talkwalker data around Quora for some user-generated content as well. So within the platform, we have an area where you can look at your top influencers, and it'll show you who is talking the most about your brand or your product and services online. When we looked specifically at Quora data around Robinhood, we saw a couple of people who are getting a lot more engagement on their posts than others. And as you can see within the platform, you'll get a lot of information around the author's reach, the reach per mention, the engagement that they're receiving off of it, and even the sentiment around what they're posting. So let's say that you wanted to start engaging with some Quora users to start to see if you could work with them for some kind of user-generated content or co-promotion. You would want to go and see who are the people that are really talking about you the most, but also are sharing positive sentiment and information about your product. So for example, I pulled out this Quora user, Edward J. Shelby. You can see that his most engaging posts are all about finance. So he's definitely someone who is speaking a lot to potential consumers within Robinhood space about financial planning and investment. And in this particular post that got a lot of engagement, what if I invest in the stock market right now in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic? It kind of has a two-pronged solution for a marketing strategy. One, it is a trending piece of information. It's about COVID and what's happening right now, and it can help you understand a lot of the concerns of potential customers who might be looking for alternative investments through a product like Robinhood. But it also shows that this man, Edward Shelby, is helping to promote the product online. He's talking about it as a really great solution. I pulled a little quote from the piece out here, basically just talking about how easy Robinhood is to use, how it's something that has really helped him try to diversify his investments during a really uncertain period of time like we're all in right now. So in looking at this, you can see that he is someone who could potentially be an advocate for your brand. So this is another great way for people to be able to go into the Quora data and start to see who they can engage with to potentially get a little bit more awareness out there around their product or service. So although finance is a large topic in Quora, another really big community within the Q&A community is around EdTech. And obviously, everybody's doing things online this year, certainly, but even prior to that, there was a lot of e-learning that was going on that people were asking questions about on Quora. So we pulled some examples from Coursera, which is an online educational platform where you can take, one-off certificate courses and things like that. And there's a lot of conversations that are happening on Quora around Coursera and the educational tools that they're offering. So for content ideation, quick example here of something that you can do very easily to start to see how you can build out some kind of positioning around your brand is look at the mentions that you're getting on Quora and see what questions people are asking about products that have to do with it. So here we pulled one of the highest engaging pieces from back in May. It was a question from a Quora user named Mark Gandy about what tools are necessary for consultants. So as you can see from this example, there's a lot of different options that are offered here. And Coursera is one of them. It's bolded there. If you look over on the right, you'll see some of the metrics that are happening. So it's got a pretty decent reach with over 1,000 potential mentions. You can see that it's got upvotes and how many page views that we have on Quora. So there's a lot of info that it'll tell you not only about the poster, but also about how much people are engaging with it and how interested they are in the question that's being discussed. So looking at this, knowing that Coursera is being mentioned and shared around necessary tools for consultants, if you wanted to create a content strategy around that, you could begin writing blog posts about consultant tools. You could begin, working with different consultancies for guest posts and Q&As and things like that around Coursera and the kind of solutions that it can provide for consultants. So that's just one avenue that were, again, I to be a Coursera marketer instead of a Talkwalker marketer, I would look to this for some kind of ideation in my content strategy, but there's a lot of other use cases for that content, no matter what industry you are in. Competitive intelligence is obviously another huge key to the lovely strategies that we're all creating day to day. As you saw in that last post, one of these competitors of Coursera was actually mentioned in that consultant specific mention that was brought up. Udemy and edX are two other platforms where a lot of people are getting online certificates and training pretty much all the time, but definitely during COVID when there's a lot more people who have been online and at home and looking to kind of expand their horizons in terms of what they're working on. So this theme cloud that was pulled from the platform has been filtered for only the mentions that are on Quora around Coursera, and without even identifying specific filters for their competitors, we see that Udemy and edX are both coming up in all the themes around Coursera. So it's definitely something that's mentioned a lot in conversations on Quora. I pulled out an example, which is the best online course platform among Udemy, Coursera, and edX. So again, looking in these specific conversations and kind of pulling apart questions that people are asking can tell you a lot about what products and services you are offering compared to your competitors, what needs you might be needing that they're not, and vice versa. And it can help a lot with product development, positioning, and just general competitive insights that are going to help you build out your strategy a lot more and understand how you can set apart your product in your market. And of course, could not do use case examples without bringing up video conferencing in 2020. At Talkwalker, we have been doing a lot of investigation into Zoom and the ways that it's really taken off in 2020. I have been using Zoom for quite some time, just living in the corporate world, but I never thought that I'd be attending as many Zoom birthday parties as I did this year. And one of the things that we really were seeing trending, especially in March and April, was this uptick in conversation around Zoom specifically compared to a lot of the other video conference softwares that have been out there for a while. So if you were working at Zoom and you really wanted to understand how you're stacking up against other more traditional players like Skype and WebEx, and even some of the newer ones that are coming into the market like House Party and Facebook, you could use Quora data to understand what kind of questions people are asking about your product and how you can position it as being able to answer those questions better than some of your competitors. So from these examples, as you can see, there are people asking, what are some sites like Zoom? Is Zoom the best video conference platform? Which do you prefer out of all of these plethora of different video conference options that you have? And through a lot of the tagging that is done within Quora, you can start to really identify different areas that you could be targeting with the ads that you're running within the platform as well, if you were looking for that B2B service. So as you can see, even though a lot of these are mentioning Zoom, they might be tagged with Cisco WebEx or they're tagged with GoToMeeting. So if you start to really identify what those tags are within Quora, alongside the Talkwalker data that you're getting around volume of mentions and the key themes, you can start to identify where your competitors are pulling ahead and the ways that you can start to reposition yourself to make sure that you're meeting needs, especially in a much more emerging market like something that video conference has provided this year. And finally, we can talk a little bit about the trend research that you can do within Talkwalker with Quora data. So again, using Zoom as an example, we pulled this sentiment theme cloud from the Talkwalker platform. And essentially what this shows is the feeling behind the key mentions that are being spoken about Zoom within Quora. So as you can see, it really kind of runs the gamut of what's making people happy about the product, what's making them upset about it. Again, this was all pulled earlier on in the pandemic. So a lot of the conversation that was happening on Quora had to do with people asking about tech solutions, hacking, work quality, and working from home. Those were all getting tied into the conversations that were happening around Zoom on Quora. So not necessarily if something is falling in a negative category, is it going to be bad press for you? So that's another really great way that you can look at Quora data to start to understand when people are talking about Zoom hacking, is it because they're worried about people being hacked on Zoom, or is it something else? So I pulled the word hack because I thought, it would be interesting to see if people were concerned about that and if that was the reason why they were choosing not to use Zoom. And what I discovered was that it was actually a reason why people were talking about the benefits of Zoom. Originally, there was a lot of issues with Zoom bombing that were going on that people were speaking about on Quora, but that really turned into more of a conversation about what Zoom was doing to try to solve those issues for its customers. So although this was weighing in a negative sentiment, when you dig a little bit deeper into the Quora questions and comments, you can see that people are actually bringing up hacking as a way to talk about benefits of Zoom compared to some of the other competitors on the market. And it also shows that through doing some of this trend research and people at Zoom seeing that this was a concern of their users, they were able to pivot what their product was offering and start to build out some of those solutions so that it wasn't something that people were concerned about. On the other side of that, I thought it was very interesting that the word destroyed had such great sentiment when you were looking at a theme cloud around those key sentiment drivers for Zoom. The word destroyed isn't necessarily something that I would think of as being super positive. So when you dive into deeper data around that in Quora, you can see that it's really all tied to this one question that was asked: what are some industries that will be completely changed or destroyed by COVID-19? This was actually, again, showing that people were really excited about Zoom. A lot of the answers that people gave to this question brought up the fact that video conferencing was giving people a lot more ability to stay connected with their teams and their communities during the pandemic, when a lot of in-person industries were being affected because people couldn't see each other anymore. It also spoke about how just video conferencing in general was starting to get a huge uptick in use, and how that now as an industry is starting to pretty much explode onto the scene. So even though a word like destroyed might seem like it would have a negative connotation, actually looking into the questions that people are asking on Quora and the answers that they're giving is showing that at the end of the day, it's a positive discussion that's happening. So without a lot of these pieces of data, you could just look at this and think, oh, people are talking on social platforms about how Zoom is destroying the competition, or everybody's really upset about Zoom getting hacked all the time. When in reality, if you do have the access to these conversations that Quora is hosting, you'll see that a lot of these conversations have to do with some positive aspects about the brand. And that's something that you can pull into a lot of your strategy going forward. So when you think about the key takeaways, I think that the main one for me is Quora is scaled. It's very, very largely untapped marketing channel. Chris, if you have anything to add to that point, please feel free.
Bring us home, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I think just showing the kinds of really interesting insights that you could pull from Talkwalker just shows the barest minimum of potential that you can get from looking at the rest of the conversations that are happening there in that community. Quora users are also, as Chris mentioned, actively researching products and services. They're not just passively scrolling on their phones. They are typing things into Google about your product, about your company. They're looking for an answer to something that you can potentially provide. So if you are developing your presence on Quora and you're starting to understand what people are asking, it's going to give you a lot more insight into product development and potential conversations that you could be having with consumers. And of course, Talkwalker data can help you unlock a lot of those insights through our demographic information, through competitive intel, through conversation tracking. You can find all of these different key insights on audiences, competitors, industry trends, current events, pretty much anything under the sun, and a lot of it can be happening in real time. And in general, I think that we all think of social listening as more focused on the big top players like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But in reality, social listening is pretty much anything that's happening online at this point, whether it's within Quora or in news sites, comment section, or even on Animal Crossing, who knows? So being able to have an understanding about what people are saying online is going to help you demystify your consumer needs and really help you scale those marketing strategies going into 2021. And now we would love to take some questions from the audience. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so it will be front and center. Let me see, we did have some come in, which is great. Someone did ask during the presentation whether or not we will be sharing slides, and I just want to confirm yes. After this session is over, everyone will receive the recording, so you will have access to this. So we also got a question. Chris, I'm going to direct this one at you. What types of companies are successful on Quora today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I alluded to this earlier in the presentation, but basically we do see a percentage of our portfolio leans towards B2B, just given people use Quora in a professional context, and that's about 60% of the overall like advertiser makeup. Other industries, and I think this correlates to just where subjective knowledge is needed in decision making. So personal finance, great example, or financial services more broadly as an industry, is we still rely pretty heavily on other people to help inform the decisions that we make there. And so a forum like Quora enables people to tap into our community of users and get answers there. And then I think when it comes to professional services or online education, we're a knowledge sharing service, so it kind of naturally translates to those industries as well. But yeah, we're working across every industry at this point.
Awesome. So next question, I'm going to kind of combine two questions that we're getting right now. How can you leverage social listening through Quora for ABM initiatives? And Michelle, thank you for your question, asked specifically for a luxury industry. So Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the tags that you all have within the Quora platform definitely help build out a lot of the ABM marketing that you can do here. ABM, account-based marketing, is something that we do a lot of Talkwalker, and we definitely use the product to try to understand the specific industries that we're trying to reach based on the kinds of questions that people are asking in there. So I think that if you really start to dive down into, looking in those specific tags for, let's say, a luxury brand, or even, the specific brands that you might be trying to identify, you can, through the questions that are being answered and the conversations that are going on, explore the ways that those play into different luxury brands that are in that space and start to really understand what those consumers are looking for there.
Yeah, to build off the ABM question, I feel like this was a hot topic back when I was at LinkedIn. It's just continued during the course of my career. And I think it's a part of the toolkit for B2B marketers, is they should absolutely have an ABM strategy where it makes sense. Where I think there's less maybe focus now, but I think it's very valuable in the B2B buying decision making process, is like being able to reach people at the point of influence through their purchase journeys. And when we think about how people use Quora, when they're researching, they're comparing, different services that a firm that sells to other businesses might be basically selling to, we would enable through our targeting suite the ability to not only just learn from those conversations, but actually reach people at that point of influence and hopefully add value during that kind of B2B buying decision-making journey. For the luxury piece, I think it's a great question. And you'll see, like, we have tags, we call them topics. And basically those are tagged to every question on Quora. It's how we organize our knowledge. And so for Luxottica or the brands within the Luxottica portfolio, you'd be able to go individually brand by brand within Talkwalker, start better understanding, I think, the sentiment, the conversations that are occurring, maybe even just the organic reach. I think what we see is a lot of brands, they start seeing the data from Quora and realize there's a lot of people talking about their brands without them actually establishing an organic presence, which I think further validates that this is a place where people are, looking at specific, maybe it's luxury brands, comparing different ones and using our community to help inform their decisions.
One more question around B2B, which I know you touched on earlier, but why should B2B marketers prioritize Quora as part of their marketing mix? I can think of many reasons. I'd love to hear from your perspective too.
Yeah, I mean, for one, it's the context in which people are using Quora. So they're using it in a professional setting, oftentimes trying to become a better professional. And sometimes it's during the buying decision-making process. We also just see that our audience tends to over-index in having like decision-making power. So being a manager or above in their organizations. But I think the most impactful and reason why we've had such success in the B2B space is just the targeting that we enable. So being able to reach someone that's looking at, IT networking infrastructure, and as Cisco, you can plug your brand kind of in that conversation, where elsewhere, for instance, a LinkedIn, you can definitely reach the decision makers, but you're not going to reach them maybe when they're actively researching a buying decision. And that's kind of our unique competitive advantage. We're also cheaper, just due to the fact that we have less, advertisers in our auction today.
Yeah. And I think for me, coming from working with a lot of B2B brands, both, from a strategic standpoint, but also within their internal marketing teams, the thing that really sets Quora apart for how you can research B2B is the fact that it's tough to find, users and influencers and consumers who are specific for B2B marketing a lot of the time. And by going in there, you can really get this vast array of data around both your industry, but also a lot of competitors that aren't maybe traditional players that are making a lot of news and trends that people are hearing about. So for B2B marketers, I think it provides a really valuable resource just because you don't have as much conversation on B2B going on in the traditional marketing streams that we see.
To build off of your section, Sam, one thing I wanted to call out is we hear from a lot of brands that they're building great blog content that never gets seen. And so they're looking for avenues to, one, inform like future content development, but also how can they get more eyeballs on the great content that they've developed, whether that's, deploying thought leadership, or maybe it's even like comparison. A lot of blog content is actually created with like a question in mind that you're trying to answer. So we have recently seen a lot of businesses start engaging organically on Quora with their own kind of growth marketing departments and trying to bring those answers or that, blog content in some fashion onto Quora to help position their brands in a non-overtly promotional way. But we do a lot of work kind of repurposing to make sure that we're elevating, I think, just like the user base and what they're trying to learn.
Yeah, I can't help with that link juice that people are trying to get for SEO too. All right. We have time for one more question. So this one's a little bit more Talkwalker specific, I think. Is there a way to be alerted when someone mentions your brand on Quora? So yes, there is a feature that Talkwalker offers called Talkwalker Alerts, and you can set that up so that you can have an alert be sent very much like Google Alerts or similar ones that are out there to be able to find out when someone specifically on Quora mentions you. So short answer is yes. Long answer, you can get set up for lots of different alerts, kind of across different social channels and platforms. But, I think to Chris's earlier point, if you are a B2B marketer and you're really trying to break into the space and see what people are saying about you online and where you can bring more content to live to get more eyes on your brand, Quora is an excellent, excellent space to be doing it in. And if you can set up alerts to make sure that you're finding out when people are doing it, then you can jump on it very quickly and begin to make it work to your advantage. All right, so I don't see any more coming in, so I think we can wrap it for today. Chris, thank you so much for your time and for talking us through the myriad of ways that marketers can work with you and your team to try to raise their presence on Quora and get some really great intel into what their consumers are looking for.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me and facilitating a great discussion. We're super excited about the partnership with Talkwalker and finally enabling brands to actually see the great conversations that are happening on Quora. So, and Walter behaved, so that's another win.
Exactly. Yes. Thankfully, it was his nap time and no one delivered anything to my apartment. So he had nothing to complain about. Well, thank you so much again. And if anyone has any questions, you can find both of us on LinkedIn. Please reach out.
Thanks. See you guys.
Bye.